Hello, folks. How are you? And welcome to another Facebook Live session. If you don't know who I am, my name is Aris. I'm an approved driving instructor, and my driving school is Arch Driver Coaching. Now, these sessions are full of tips and advice to help your driving or helping your learning to drive. And last week we focused on top tips for driving in the winter. Today we're going to be focusing on, so it's more aimed towards parents today. It's 5 top tips for helping your child on their learning to drive journey. Okay, particularly we're going to be focusing on what we call private practice. So essentially supervising your child's driving from the passenger seat. Okay, so the 5 top tips to make that journey as fun, as safe, and as productive as possible. If you're watching, guys, come and say hello. It's the interaction that makes live sessions, that gives them an extra dimension, makes them all the more enjoyable. So come and say hello, and feel free to ask any questions that you may have. Okay, so to start, first of all, top tip number 1. And top tip number 1 is being legal and not falling foul of the law when you are supervising your child and during their private practice. And this came to me really because there was an occasion where one of my learner's parents asked me, is my son covered by my insurance when we go out? So I'm going to touch on insurance, but also let's touch on all the things that we need to do, you need to do to make sure that you're legal on the road. So the first thing is, in order to supervise your learner driver, you need to be at least 21 years of age and have held your driving license for 3 years or more. It is also important that you are able to drive the category of vehicle that your learner wishes to learn in. So in other words, if you have an automatic only license, then no matter how many years of experience you've got, you cannot supervise your son or daughter in a manual car. Okay. The second thing I need you to remember is that it's your learner who's driving the car, but I'd like you to think about it that you're also driving the car. The reason I say that is because there have been situations in the past where mum or dad has used the mobile phone very quickly because they think that they're not driving. It's their son or daughter who's driving, and that has resulted in points and the fine. Now, so if you're supervising your learner driver, you're not allowed to use any handheld device, any mobile phone. Switch them off, stow them away, because just think you're also driving the car alongside your child. Okay. The other thing I need you to remember is no motorways. Okay. So you're not allowed to go in motorways. Learner drivers can only go on a motorway with a driving instructor and in a dual control car. So that's something that we can do. I can do with the learner, but unfortunately, you're not allowed to go on motorways. Okay. And also remember L plates, front and back. Okay. Top tip: L plates do fall off, so it's always a good idea to carry a spare couple of L plates in the boot of the car. All right. The other thing, I've got my list here so I don't miss anything out. Of course, your car needs to be roadworthy, MOT, tax, all that. And now let's go to the topic of insurance, okay? Now, it is unlikely that your policy that you have on your car is going to cover your learner driver, okay? It's different. If the car belongs to your learner, then they need their own policy. But if the car belongs to you, then you have 2 options. The first option is speaking to your insurance company to add your learner driver onto your policy, paying an extra premium or whatever that is, and then your learner is covered to drive your car with you in the passenger seat, of course. Or there are various insurance providers out there that will provide your learner driver with their own policy, okay, for when they go out with you. And the added bonus there is that there is no risk to your no claims discount should should there be a claim. Okay, so that might be an extra bit of reassurance that a good point to think about when you come to insure. Make sure that your learner is insured. Okay, and just remember, it is very unlikely that your policy is just going to cover your learner driver. Make sure you've got adequate insurance. Okay, so that's top tip number one, and that is essentially that you are legal on the road. Okay, top tip number two is staying calm and staying patient in the passenger seat when your learner is driving. Okay, now I know that if you've not done it before, because I started somewhere as well before I became an instructor. I was a trainee instructor, and there was a first lesson, and there was the first time when I supervised the learner driver, and you can feel stressed about it. You've got to manage all that risk. It is a stressful situation initially, but it gets better. So let me give you some top tips on how to stay calm and be patient and be a positive influence for your learner driver. Again, guys, if you're watching, come and say hello. It'd be lovely to speak to you. Lovely to hear from you anyway. And as ever, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So back to our top tip about staying calm. The first thing I would suggest is, before you go out, have a sit down and have a little sort of briefing and say, right, what are we going to do today? All right. Be guided by your learner driver. It's their lesson. It's their training. Ask them what they feel that they need to do. Ask them what they want to work on. So all of those things are going to help that lesson be as productive as possible. Okay, when you set your aim, so let's say for argument's sake, you're deciding you want to work on junctions. Okay, it's always a good idea not to go above the level that they have achieved with their driving instructor. So if they've been working on junctions, go and practice junctions. If they've been working on roundabouts, then you can go and practice some roundabouts. But try not to start a new topic. Try not to start something new. The reason I say that is, it is possible, if you start something new, that your learner will not be prepared to, will make more mistakes, will not be as competent as they would be with a topic that they've already covered, and you might find yourself in a situation where you feel more stressed because you've got to manage a situation that's you perceive to be sort of more risk there, and that can sort of affect how calm you are and how sort of patient you are in the passenger seat. So just try and stay within what your learner has achieved with their driving instructor. Okay, select what area you're going to go to and select a good time of day. So if you're just starting out with supervising your learner driver, Friday at 5 p.m. In the vicinity of Broxden roundabout, if you're familiar with Perth, might not be the best idea, but a Sunday morning in Oak Bank is going to be much better in terms of sort of what you... it's a better setting, and especially when you're starting off and getting used to supervising your learner. Okay. Another tip about staying calm is that learners need more time. Okay, they need time to process your instructions or directions. They need time to process what you're asking them to do. So it is important that you give as clear directions as possible and in good time. So let me give you an example of bad instructing. Okay, so bad directions. All right. So if I was just speaking to a good friend, his name's Simon, so I'll use the name Simon, and I'll just say, okay, here's an example of a bad instruction. Okay, right, Simon, at the roundabout ahead, take the road on the right, or take the road on the left. Right, ahead, left. Okay, that will confuse them. So if you identify what they're going to do and say, at the roundabout, take the road on the right, third exit, and you do that in good time, they're much more likely to start processing that and start doing the things that they need to do on approach to that roundabout. You may even want to help them further by saying, that's the first exit that we've gone past, that's the second exit, it's the next exit that we want, and that will help them greatly, giving clear instruction and in good time. Okay. Another thing, your learner will always be doing their best, and that is one of the things that my trainer gave me advice a long time ago, was that it doesn't matter if your learner's not doing what you are asking them to do. Remember that they are doing their best for you. Okay, just that's a good thing to remember. Okay. The other thing would be prepared to help them. Okay, so if you get into a situation where stress is rising steadily, and I'll tell you a story. I remember a good example of that. And we were emerging right from a T-junction, an Oak Bank, I think it was, a long time ago now. And there was a learner car in front, and my learner and I gave them a good bit of distance. It was slightly uphill as well, so they're emerging uphill, and they stalled. And stalled again, and again, and again. We were there for at least 4 minutes or 5 minutes, and this learner kept stalling and eventually kind of stalled their way out of the junction and onto the main road. Once they managed that, we saw the doors fling open. You could see how agitated this girl was and her dad, and they swapped seats, and that was probably the end of the lesson. So if you find yourself in a situation where your learner is struggling, don't let that stress level rise. Just say, right, do you need my help here? Okie dokie, and it may well be, provided it's safe, that you've got to swap over, or if you've rented a car from a well-known dealership that provides dual control cars, you might want to use the clutch to help them emerge, because that's really what they were struggling with there. Okay, so top tip, be a positive influence, keep calm, be patient, your learner is doing their best. Okay, right, moving on to top tip number 3. And top tip number 3 is all about keeping safe. One of my favorite questions is, when I ask my learners, is who's responsible for the safety of this car? And most learners will say, I am. Some learners might say, you are, Alice. Okay, but a lot of learners will actually say, we're both responsible. So it's a shared responsibility. So when you're out with your learner driver, you're sharing that responsibility. They're in the car, but you're also in the passenger seat. And remember, learners will not be as aware of hazards. They won't anticipate what other road users are going to do as well as you will. Okay, so you might think, gosh, there's going to be a pedestrian walking up behind that bus in a moment, but your learner might not think that. If you're driving along and there's a car in front of you wishing to turn right, you might think that that car is not going to be able to turn right because there's oncoming vehicles. But your learner will see the car, but they won't necessarily think the same thing. So you've got to be really at your top of your, just be aware of the hazards, anticipate what other road users are doing, speak to your learner in good time, again, good time, and you've got to be able to spot that trouble that your learner may have missed. Okay, so that will help keep you very safe when you're supervising your learner from the passenger seat. Okay, so if we think about this, we've got through our first 3 top tips. First one was about staying legal and not falling foul of the law when you're supervising your learner driver. The second one was about being calm, being a positive influence, being patient in the passenger seat. And the third tip was about keeping safe and anticipating what other road users are going to do, and being aware of spotting hazards and spotting trouble that your learner may have missed. Okay. Now, top tip number 4. Okay, make your time together in the car as fun as possible. Make it enjoyable. If you make it enjoyable, your learner will want to go back out with you, okay? And practice is important, so make it as enjoyable as possible. So, top tip about making it enjoyable: balance your criticism with praise, okay? So it could well be that, let's say, you're turning left, for argument's sake, from a main road onto a side road, okay? And it may well be that the steering wasn't quite what it should be. Your learner didn't steer as well as they should have, okay? So stop afterwards, let's have a chat about it. Ask them to tell you one good thing about what they've just done, or maybe one thing that they needed to work on. So talk about the steering by all means, but don't forget to praise them for doing their mirrors, praise them for signaling in good time, praise them for reducing their speed and approach to the junction. Just so balance your constructive criticism with your praise, okay? Also, it can become quite silent in the car sometimes. So, if you're just focusing on instructions and directions, so if there's a quiet sort of, or reasonably quiet bit of road, there's nothing wrong with engaging in some just normal conversation. But just remember that if you're going to ask them to do something like turn, or there's something, a junction or a roundabout coming up to negotiate, you've got to sort of curtail that conversation in good time and get on to your directions and instructions, okay? Don't forget to take a break, okay, and don't have an absolute sort of huge a long lesson. So don't forget to take a break. And also a good tip would be to add an event. Whether it's a pumpkin spice latte or an ice cream at the end of it. It creates a tradition and something to look forward to at the end of your lesson, if you like. Okay. Finally, top tip number 5 is let's work together. Okay, work together with me, work together with your instructor. Don't be afraid to ask questions. For example, what topic are you on at the moment? When would my child be ready to go out on the road with me? Where is a good place to go? And to answer that question particularly, because it is an important one, when is your child ready to go out on the road with you? I would say consult your instructor, but give them some time to learn some of the basic car control skills and get a little bit more confident on the road before you go out with them to practice. I think that is a super idea. They've got to be able to change gears, use the clutch, brake, steer reasonably independently. So that it's always a good idea to just wait until your instructor has helped them develop those skills before you go out with them on the road. And the other thing would be, let's be consistent, okay? So it may well be that, don't be afraid to pick up the highway code and have a read. And also, I always say to my learners, your mum and dad are very safe drivers. They've been ferrying you around from day 1 to year 17. But sometimes, and it happens to us all, bad habits can creep in from last time somebody looked at your driving was a long time ago, so there might be some bad habits that creep in, and it's important not to transfer those habits onto your learner. So I always tell my learners, do things the way that we've done them together, but I would also suggest that if you're making that investment in your child's training, there is nothing wrong to say to go out with me for an hour or two and that'll give you an idea of how we do our training, what we've been doing with your son or daughter, and how you can better support them. It may well be a worthwhile investment. Okay, so those are the 5 tips today, guys. But what I would suggest is that I've got one last bonus tip for you, and the bonus tip is that you've been teaching your child to drive from day 1 for a number of years, and I'll give you an example that really shocked me. My daughter's now 6.5. This was about a couple of years ago. She was just over 4 years old, and we talked about how you need to stop at red lights, and you can go if it's safe when it's green. So we're at traffic light controlled crossroads, and we were ready to turn right. And lights went from red to green. I moved forward. I couldn't turn right because I got an oncoming vehicle, so I had to wait. While I was waiting in the box, the lights changed. They went to red. And as soon as it became safe, I turned right and completed the turn. Only to hear from the back seat from a 4-year-old, "Dad, you've just gone through a red light, or the light was red. You told me we have to stop." Now, I was really pleased that she said that, because that showed she was paying attention. It was really difficult to explain traffic light controlled crossroads to a 4-year-old. But what I'm trying to say is that if you glance or pick up your mobile phone when the lights are red, or send a text, if you go in an amber light, if you have all these sort of, and I'm not saying it's you necessarily, but people out there, you might have some bad habits, then you might find, well, how can you expect your young son or daughter to have a good attitude to driving, and to be a safe and thoughtful driver? So what I'm trying to say is, remember, if you have your children in the car, they are watching your driving. So make sure that you're the best driver you can be. It's not just when you're supervising them. They've been watching you for a number of years. Okay, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Next time we're going to be talking about what to expect on your first driving lesson. So we're going to the beginning of the journey, and the next one is going to be geared more towards learners. As ever, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. I'd be more than happy to give you any advice or answer any questions that you might have. Okay, thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.